So, what I learned this week is about Panama.
Panama City.
But it's actually about Panama because this is
true.
not in Panama City. This is in the country of Panama.
Okay.
So what we learned, of course, if you go to Panama, you want to go see the canal. The Panama Canal. Honestly,
iconic. I feel like as an ignorant tourist, it's one of the only things going in that I know about Panama. You know what I mean?
A lot of people are like, "Why are you going to Panama? The canal?" And it's like, no, okay, it's a really interesting country, and but it's not as touristy as say its neighbor Costa Rica.
Right.
And I've actually been to Colombia and Costa Rica with the neighbor of both.
Both sides of Panama.
Both sides of Panama. And both really amazing, interesting countries. But Panama was very developed. It had the American currency, a lot to do with the history of the Panama Canal, which was the main thing that we really learned about when we were there. It's a huge part of why its economy is pretty strong. This canal is wild. So what I want to talk to you about is Lake Gatun, which is what we learned.
We did not know this.
We did not know about this lake.
Also realized how little I understood about the canal. I'm so embarrassed, which I'll maybe explain a little bit after you explain.
Yeah, Mitch
this
was
lake.
Even while we were there, Mitch was not fully grasping what was going on. It was really
until
funny.
Greg figured out this lake thing. Okay.
Okay. So, anyways, in order to get ships across from the Pacific to the Atlantic, they used to have to obviously go around South America. Very far, way more expensive until they realized that there was an isthmus. Isthmus, which is the name for a very thin layer of land that connects two oceans. So Panama is an isthmus. It's very thin, so they decided to make a canal through it so that ships could go through and essentially change economy and shipping forever.
And save, I think they said that it would take 2 weeks to go around versus 8 hours to go across.
And so what they had to do, because Panama is still relatively thick, is they needed to flood the middle of it in order to create a giant human-made lake that boats could then go through. And this lake is called Lake Gatun, and they built a dam on this.
But you say it different every time.
I don't know. I know. Oh, wait. What would be the Spanish word of like gaton?
Yeah,
no, that's French. Wow. Anyways. They built a dam to actually flood this huge portion of Panama that now essentially you can just picture literally oil tankers going through this.
Picture mountaintops that have become islands. Maybe not full-fledged mountains, but what once looked like giant mountains, now boats go through as though they're islands.
Well, they weren't mountains. They were more. They were wooded area, hills.
Right,
I would say
hills. Okay.
Yeah. And there was a wooded area that now it's really interesting because a lot of scientists actually study these specific islands because they're untouched by humans. Essentially, these human-created islands by flooding this middle of Panama to create this man-made lake. I don't like saying that, woman and man-made lake, although it was mostly men when you learn about the history, has created this specific sort of untouched islands where they are now looking at what is actually would have happened if you looked in these parts of the world.
And just left them alone.
And left them alone, which I thought was so interesting. Yeah. But they did not in the museum go into this lake enough because I was
it was one word on a thing that in museums I'm always skin.
Yeah, Mitch was not.
Greg was did you see about the lake? And I was I don't know what you're talking about. I was 2 rooms ahead of him because I'm you're so slow, and then I realized I don't read properly.
But it's crazy. I still think it's crazy. I'm I wish being there. I was they flooded the middle of Panama to create this canal. It wasn't a big topic of conversation when you're learning about it. You learn a lot about the lock system. You actually can physically go there and watch the boats get lifted up to above sea level to go through this human-made lake.
And the lake is 80 kilometers long. So then they travel 80 kilometers and then get brought back down to the ocean.
There's a lot of sunken ships in the lake for any of the ships that go off the beaten path, I guess trying to make it a little shorter, and then they obviously hit something because it's you need to stay on this path. It's designed for this reason. Anyways, I thought it was interesting to know that canal is not in fact a skinny little portion of land.
This is literally what I thought. I just have to quickly say and I'm sure other people thought this too, because I've seen the lock mechanism be described to me, and I thought that was the whole canal. That I thought it was part of Panama was so skinny that there was a 100-meter stretch that the boats would just go over and be to the other side. And then when we were at the canal, I was why didn't they just drill all the way through the land so the boats didn't have to go up and over? Not realizing that it's literally 80 kilometers they have to travel once they get raised up.
Yeah.
I'm so stupid.
No, well, you couldn't know that. The only thing that was a little bit too stupid about it was that we were reading the museum and you still thought that until near the end of it.
As we were just talking, I realized when because we first got there and heard them talking with the speaker oh, it would take 2 weeks to go around. It takes 8 hours to go through. I was 8 hours to go through this tiny little lock? I was is it because it's such a backlog of all these ships just waiting for their turn that they just have to sit there for 8 hours? It's no, it's 80
It's a
kilometers.
long trip, yeah.
But much shorter than going
And
around.
I just think about, imagine being like in that like land in the jungle and just like swimming on a beach and just seeing oil tanker after oil tanker after oil tanker go through. And as us living on the East Coast, like in Toronto and New York City, for example, any Chilean wine that you have has come through the Panama Canal.
So many fruits
all
and vegetables
bananas
from
from Ecuador. But another interesting thing is that from California, a lot of the food that they make, we still will receive from a ship that went through the Panama Canal. So it would go down and go through as opposed to being driven. In some cases, it's more actually like economically
Probably cheaper, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, fascinating. As much as I was sort of like, what is this canal? When I got there, I was like, this is